Hello, good afternoon everyone and welcome to Infinite Learning webinar. My name is Rebecca Anand and I'm the Managing Partner and Co-Founder of Infinite Learning. We are delighted to be running this webinar today in partnership with Emma Paine, and we welcome her to speak about Send Online, Addressing the Issues. Emma has developed this webinar as an introduction to our forthcoming virtual course of the same name. Now, whilst the course approaches the issues that have arisen predominantly with online learning, it's also going to provide a wide range of practical and easy to implement strategies which can be adopted to support these individual areas online and of course in the physical classroom too as schools start to go back to school. Questions such as, how do I prompt? How can I encourage that ADHD student to focus? How do I support independent work? How do I make learning more kinesthetic? How do I ensure my adaptations and intervention strategies are recorded so that I have evidence of my support? So the course will consider those questions and provide some answers for those and many more questions. So just before I hand over to Emma, a few small areas of housekeeping. Attendees are automatically on listen-only mode, and we'll allow Emma to deliver her presentation in full and then have a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. You'll see on your dashboard that you'll have a chat area, so please feel free to use that to ask questions as we go along during the presentation, and we'll come to those at the end. We will use the last 15 minutes of the webinar to answer as many of those questions as possible. Just to answer some possible questions in advance, a video recording of this webinar will be sent to you tomorrow, along with a short webinar survey and a certificate of attendance. Please do take a couple of minutes to give us your feedback. We'd be most grateful. Post the webinar today, we will also send you a PDF of the PowerPoint and an additional resource that Emma has very kindly shared with us. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Emma Paine. Emma, over to you.
Hello everyone and welcome to this free webinar where I get to talk to you a little bit about myself and also introduce Send Online, where we will be addressing the issues. Now, just before we start, I would like to give a little plug out for myself. I've got an Instagram and a Facebook page that I use to put up any inspirational quotes, ideas, activity ideas, usually around special educational needs. So if you are on either of those platforms, I do appreciate the follow. Now, industries around the world have changed the way they communicate, the way they interact, the way they share information, and it's been throughout the world, as we know, and teaching is no different. And you, as teachers around the world, have gathered together and become united in that delivery of your curriculum in any way that you can. And it hasn't been without the battles and the triumphs, and I'm sure these two images here are images that you can relate to. We've had those battles where things have gone wrong and not quite worked out as well as you would hope to, and that could have been technical issues. Like me, I'm not very technical, so I find that the smallest thing can sometimes throw me. But then we've also had those triumphs where we've celebrated and said, yes, this is working and this is doing well. And that's important that we embrace those triumphs, most definitely. And so here we go. All of you deserve that gold cup, that medal, and a good pat on the back. However, we are looking at special educational needs here, and that's a group that have felt slightly neglected. And we need to be thinking about how we're going to incorporate things in future online learning. what has become apparent is that there is an undercurrent of discussion, and that is around where does blended or hybrid learning sit within our delivery of lessons. And increasingly there are institutions that are adopting a blended or hybrid platform, a way of delivering. So I think everyone's now logged on, and we'll start the proper presentation now. So I want everyone to say hello and give a shout out. So a nice hello from everyone, and we've got Infinite Learning here with us. So if you give a shout out and say hello, they can see that, and that's wonderful. So I'll say a hello from me. I'm a fairly structured person, and this is how I'm going to be delivering this today. And I will be looking at introducing myself first. Then I'll be introducing the course outline, the module outline. Then I'll be looking at the module content, specific modules, and then finally we will have a Q&A at the end. And I'll start with me. So if you haven't got a video of me anywhere, I don't know, with upload speeds or whatever, here is a picture of me. This is what I look like. I think it's always important. I think it's nice as well to have an image or put a face to the voice that you're hearing. So this is me. Ooh, sorry, I went back. Technical problems. So a little bit about me. I love walking in the Lake District. I have an absolute love for cats. I love those cozy winter evenings when you're huddled up. Love spending time with my family. And there's nothing better for me than filling my pencil case with new stationery. I think they're general loves, and I think most people have the same ones. So here's a little bit extra. I still haven't outgrown Lego. I absolutely love it. I really enjoy a good sci-fi movie, a bit of a Trekkie myself. And if I see ants carrying leaves or grains, I get my video camera out because I think they're fascinating. And now we'll go into a bit more serious stuff about me. So I've been working with students, with children within education since the 1990s. And I've been fortunate enough to work in primary, nursery and secondary schools. I count myself as being very fortunate to have been the initial person in two new schools, and set up the learning support departments before other members of staff joined a year later. So I've been very fortunate to be in that position, and it's been very rewarding. And those departments, I'm happy to say, are still up and running and successful today. Oops. And again, another technical boo-boo. I have worked with a number of special needs, and many of these I'm sure you are familiar with. You know these, they've been in your class. But I've worked with more than this, obviously, but these are the ones that I'm sure that you would be familiar with. From the age of 17, I have been involved in charity work, and I'm still involved in charity work today. I always set myself a target for the year, and I work with a charity and do some work. So in my early 20s, I worked with Oxfam and Greenpeace, and then later on, I worked for 12 years with the Woodcraft folk, and took children away on week-long, 2 weeks and weekend camps. And for the last 2 years before I left the UK, I was a district delegate, which was wonderfully rewarding and helped me to see another side to charity work. More recently, I was involved in the renovation of a charity school. I was the project manager for that, and that was a renovation for premises for orphans and refugees from Yemen and Syria. So I think it's important that you know a little bit about my background, to give a little bit of, give myself some credentials so that you feel confident that the person who's going to be delivering this to you knows their stuff. So I started out my career as a learning support assistant way back in my early 20s, and then I trained as an early years practitioner. Now, my headmistress and my department head steered me and urged me to work with special needs children. And it was pretty instant that it was an absolute match for me. I loved it. I felt empowered. I fell in love with the children, and it was a wonderful experience for me. I was then asked to move on to the primary school with them and work with them there. And as they were developing themselves and being given extra tasks, then other issues, other difficulties came into play. Things like dyslexia and dyspraxia and EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and other things. So every time I came across a new concern, a new issue, that's when I started training again. I took on another course. And so over the years, with every challenge that I had, I then adapted and took on a new course in order to understand that better and further my practice. When I then worked in secondary schools, I found that the emotional side of the child took a greater effect for me. That was my experience. All of us have different experiences through our educational journey and teaching practice. So for me, that's what I found. So I then did my diploma in child psychology and in child and adolescent counselling, and that helped me with my delivery and my practice. And through the years, I also trained as a teacher myself. So that's a little bit about me. But I think, like me, and that's why you're here today, we are lifelong learners as educators, and we continue to be lifelong learners when you're in education, because it's consistently and constantly developing further and further. So I think that's me introduced. I hope that that was a fair introduction to me, and you feel a little bit more confident about the person who's hopefully going to be delivering these modules to you. So now I'm going to talk about the course outline. And this is obviously a course called Send Online, and it looks at delivering to special educational needs and disabilities through online learning. So it's one course with 5 modules. Module 1 is looking at supporting ASD, ADD and ADHD. That's autistic spectrum disorder, attention deficit disorder, and attention deficit with hyperactivity disorder. Supporting dyslexia and dyspraxia, supporting students, supporting parents, and finally, module 5 is supporting teachers, supporting you and your colleagues. So that's one course with 5 modules. Now, I want to have a little moment here just to reassure you about something, because I've attended webinars and courses online in the past, and I'm sure you have as well. And I've found that sometimes there can be a whole load of people on those webinars, and I'll be sitting there and I've got my questions written out and I'm ready to ask. But when it came to the close of the webinar, or towards the end when we had the opportunity to ask questions, mine weren't answered. So I want to reassure you about that now. So myself and the girls in Infinite Learning, we've capped the number of attendees. So if you were going to join me on this course, then there won't be a load of people there. It will be a small number. I think we've said approximately 20 people or thereabouts. So it's going to be a number that we can actually interact properly. It's important for us to do that because we are dealing with special educational needs, and some subject matters are suitable for a wider arena where you have 100, 200 people listening in, and that's fine. But when you're dealing with special educational needs and teachers have genuine concerns about delivery and genuine questions to ask, then it's important that we have that interaction. And for that to happen, for you to join me and for us to actually talk about things properly so that you do get a proper answer, you do walk away feeling fulfilled and feeling that, yes, I fully understand that, and yes, I've got it. Now I feel supported in order to go on and practice myself. It's important to keep those numbers down for that very reason. So that is going to happen on this course, and we are going to be able to talk properly and interact. So now I will talk about the module outline. So each module will consist of a short activity which gets sent out to you in advance. Now this here is the example, which is coming from module 1, and it's merely a short activity to promote your thoughts and ideas surrounding the subject for that module, that particular module. So they're all different. They will not take you longer than 30 minutes. I completed one myself and it took me 15 minutes, if that. However, I'm saying 30 minutes just as a guide. And it's merely there just to prompt thoughts and ideas so that when you come to actually attend the module, or we start the module, then your way of thinking, your line of thoughts are already in that mode. It will also consist of a 40 to 45 minute webinar and a 10-minute Q&A at the end. You will also have a resource booklet that is given out to you. For each of the modules that you'll attend, you will have a resource booklet that's given to you. One of them, or two actually for each module. One will be a printable version if you choose to print, and one of them will be an editable version for you to use online. Now the reason I'm giving you a printable one is because you may want to have one on your shelf, and you can, some of the resources you can print and reuse again in your classroom when and if you're in your physical classroom. But the other one's all editable, so it's you download it and you click away, and then you can email them off. So there's two versions of each of these modules. Now each of these are different for each of the modules. Each of these focus on specifically on that area that we're looking at for each of those modules. And here is an example, just a snapshot of some of the resources that are in just module 1 and 2, actually, these ones. So this is just a snapshot of what the resources look like, or some of the resources. And they really are, I've enjoyed making them, and they really are a bonus for any teacher, I think. So I think they're pretty wonderful, if I can wave my own flag. So that's it. That's what each of the modules consists of. And now I'll look at the module content. So module 1 is supporting ASD, ADD and ADHD, and I'm going to be using this as this module as a template as a guide just for the explanation. So I've got the introductory cover, send online, supporting ASD, ADD and ADHD. Oh dear, and I do it again. So each of the modules, I'm quite systematic, and I've got this approach to each of the modules, and I think it works. So the start of each of the modules, we will be looking at the concerns, the real genuine concerns. And then for the second part of each of those modules, we'll be going through the discussion of the solutions. And that's where those resources come into play, because that's where we're looking at the strategies that can be adopted and can be incorporated into your online practice, and then to help overcome some of those concerns and battles that we have with delivering to special educational needs children. So as you can see, I won't read this for you, but as you can see, this looks at the concerns, and I'll just leave you a minute to read. And then for the second part of the module, so that's what the whole of the module will be looking at for module 1, and that's pretty much how all of the modules will look like. First part, we'll look at the concerns. Second part, we're looking at those strategies that can be introduced, incorporated and used. Now, as you can see, there are little pause marks. Those pause marks are for me, oh, there we go, to show you that there are opportunities where you can take notes. So you can pause, and the pause button will be there up in the taskbar, and then over to the right there is the notes icon there, and then prompting you to take notes. So for module 1, as I said, we'll be looking at what is ASD, what is ADD, and what is ADHD. And then we'll be looking at what the specialist recommends for ASD and ADHD. Now, why do I do that for starters? We as teachers, some of you may be familiar with students who have those difficulties. Some of you may not. Some of you may have had a child with one of those difficulties a few years ago, or you may have someone that's coming into your class with that difficulty. Some of you may be new and not had any experience with that at all. Regardless of where you are, either experienced, currently experienced, or new to it completely, it's always good to have a reminder to jog your memory and also to re-familiarize yourself with something. I think it's good practice to do that. And then when we look at the strategies that the specialists recommend, what do the specialists recommend? Well, for starters, that's where I get my resources from. That's where we get the resources from. Those strategies that I've adapted and included in this course are coming from what the specialists recommend. I haven't just woken up one morning and thought, oh, I've got a good idea, and then shared it. Those strategies that I'm incorporating into each of those modules are coming from a foundation of what the specialists recommend. And for me, as good practice for me, is to share that with you so that you can see that the strategies that are that we're covering in each of these modules is something that a specialist recommend. And there's those strategies popping up all over the place, and there they are. So you will have a variety of strategies. Now, some of those strategies will be there to support with planning. Some of those strategies will be there to support the actual delivery of the lesson. Some of those are to help and promote confidence, and some of those are there to help with your evidence. As a practitioner, whether you're an LSA, TA, teacher, tutor, wherever you are, or potential teacher or potential LSA, these resources will be beneficial to you and support your practice. And as I said earlier, these can be used in the physical classroom as well. So you could use these now for online learning if that's what you're doing, but you could also use them in the physical classroom as well, because we don't know if we're going to be working in the classroom, starting in the classroom, and then having to move to hybrid or blended learning. So to have a resource that can be adapted and used for both, I think is, and that's kind of how I made them, so that they were adaptable like that. It creates that familiarity for you as a practitioner, but also for the students to have that continuity. So you can start with one thing and then it flows straight in if you have to do hybrid or blended learning, or if you have to go back to the classroom, whatever, you can use them in both. Right, so that's the module content. I'm now going to look at specific modules, so that's the rest of the modules. So for supporting dyslexia and dyspraxia. Now, some of you might be thinking, why have I decided to include dyspraxia as well as dyslexia? Most courses focus on dyslexia, and that's fine. However, many students who are diagnosed with dyspraxia first started off with a diagnosis of dyslexia. So it's important to cover both of those. There's a very common overlap. Many of the issues overlap from dyslexia to dyspraxia, especially with language. Now, that's language, both written and verbal. And dyspraxia is also known as DCD, which is developmental coordination disorder. And 52% of dyslexia students have elements of dyspraxia as well. They have a difficulty with organisation, and that can be with both the verbal and the written language, as well as thoughts and ideas. They have difficulty with essay writing, paragraph writing, organisation of sentence structures, and sometimes even words. And commonplace terms are "it's all over the place" or "there's no particular order or structure." And sometimes you may notice that a student with dyslexia or dyspraxia may start their writing in the middle of the page rather than by the margin, which seems to be the natural place to start. They also have concerns with organisation of thoughts and their ideas, and some of them have that much the same disorganisation with that. As a result of that, with both dyslexia and dyspraxia, their confidence level can drop, and they become familiarised with using simple language, and as a result they limit their vocabulary with both the written work and when they're verbalising their answers, and they become simplified. There are also high levels of anxiety and stress with those students. 6 to 14-year-olds have high levels of anxiety, and 40% of 13 to 18-year-olds have significant anxiety when it comes to working in school and producing work. So it's important to support both of those, and the strategies obviously that we cover allow for that. So as you can see, there's an awful lot to consider. Now, the strategies and the resources that cover dyslexia and dyspraxia are easily adaptable, as I said earlier, for both online and in the classroom. And they really do support those students. So Module 3 is looking at supporting students generally. And you may think, well, haven't you just done that with Module 1 and Module 2? And you'll be fair to say, yes, I did, because I was looking at ASD, ADD, ADHD, and then I was looking at dyslexia and dyspraxia. However, this is this module is looking at the other students. So I want you to just take a moment to think, close your eyes if you want to, and I want you to think about that quirky child in your classroom, the one with the funny interests, the one that's always cracking the jokes, the super kind and sensitive ones, and the ones who are clumsy and bumping into things. And I'm sure that you have a number of students in mind already. So we've already looked at those students with a diagnosis when we're looking at students with ADHD or dyslexia and ADD. We're looking at the other children in this. So if we looked at the ones that we've probably already covered, we're looking at that 18% there, that 4 number, because I'm thinking in a class size of 22. Now, the reason I chose 22, by the way, is because I've worked in a number of schools where 22 was the average class size. I had to choose a number in order to create this model, so I used that number. Your particular class size may be smaller or larger, and that's fine. But I had to have a number, so that's what I chose. So when we look at those students with a diagnosis, now I'm talking about, sorry, I forgot I did the laser thing, so I hope that doesn't put anyone off. So we're talking about the students who had a diagnosis of ADHD or dyslexia, and possibly a physical diagnosis. Maybe someone has an eyesight problem. So say we've got 4 children in a classroom that have that difficulty. Now we're going to look at another group though. That's what this module actually covers, the other students. We're looking at the ones who are working towards, those students who are underachieving, the ones who always have, they're on a, sometimes they're on a table and they have support there most of the time, or someone's checking on them, or maybe the LSA or TA or the teacher goes and gives them a little nudge now and again, but they don't have a formal diagnosis. They may well be students who are also on your radar for having conversations with your learning support department with. There are also those students that you may have already spoken about at parent and teacher meetings. It's also looking at those students who are working above targets, the ones who are in an area where they're finishing their work and constantly saying, well, can you check my work? And you're saying, well, here's the extension work, or now go and edit your work. So it's looking at those 2 groups of students. And of course, when we look at those 2 students, we're looking at over 30% of that class size. So that's a large number. So if you look at that first 18% roughly of students with a diagnosis covered in those first 2 modules, and then we're looking at this group of students covered in module 3, we're looking at, over 50% of your class. And then we can move on to module 4. So module 4 is looking at supporting parents. And we need to think about those parents. Now, we're not talking about all of your parents. Well, I'm certainly not. I'm not talking about all of your parents. I'm talking about the parents of those students who have difficulties, those students who have special educational needs and disabilities. They're the students I'm looking at. They're the parents I'm looking at, sorry. They've had a conversation at some point, either with you as a teacher or with the learning support department, with a healthcare worker, with a doctor, with someone, where they have said something is wrong. And they may have been, they may have actually gone to the professional themselves and said, I think something is wrong. So we need to think about these parents and their journey and what they've gone through in order for us to think about why do they need that support from us? Why are we supporting our parents? Well, they've been on a journey, and it started off with someone, either you, learning support, a doctor, a health visitor, or themselves, saying something's wrong, something's not right, and we need to investigate it. They're concerned, they're worried, they're not sure about the future. As with all parents, it will be what's going to happen for the future. How is this going to change things? I'm scared, I'm concerned, I'm worried. What do we do? They get the diagnosis, or it's under investigation, and they're even more concerned. They're unsure, they're unfamiliar, they're probably in unfamiliar territory if it's their first child as well. And they're worried, they are worried. They've got that anxiety going on. And then they get their diagnosis and they're thinking, well, hang on a minute, because by now that they've had those discussions and they've had that investigation going on and assessment, they've got their diagnosis and they're thinking, well, where's my support? What's happening? Well, I need to fight for my child. My child has a genuine need and I need to find out what's going to happen next. And I used the image of the judge there just because it was a good one for me to use, but I know that not all parents are angry, so please don't assume that's what I think. So they've then had their diagnosis, they've asked what's going to happen next, and then they get called in for that meeting, and that meeting will be with the learning support department, it will be with you as a teacher and possibly a member of the learning support team who's going to be, or someone who's working with that child, or someone else, another professional. And they're listening to that advice, they're listening to that plan that's being suggested and those strategies that are being used or going to be used. And they're thinking, okay, I'm listening to you and I'll take it on board, but let's see what happens. Because don't forget, by now our parents have Googled things and they've been Googling probably for a week or 2 weeks, and they know what's going on in other schools. And then you produce the goods. You have a plan in place. The learning support department have stepped in. They are seeing their child's work at home and thinking, hey, this is improved. This is pretty wonderful. This is great. And they're feeling happy, and that's wonderful. It's wonderful when you see parents genuinely go from genuine concern and anguish, and then see that process going through and thinking, yay, my child is having support and I can see the results. The teachers are giving me positive comments now, and I can see my child is developing in confidence, and that's wonderful. And then COVID came. So what do they do? What do these parents do? And how do they feel now? Well, we need to support them. Ooh, and we need to support those parents again. So that's why it's important to go on and look at ways to create those relationships, repair if we need to keep and maintain that relationship with them, so that they have faith in the school, in you, and I'm sure many of your parents, of course, have faith in you as an educator. However, when we're looking at the emotional journey that parents go on when they're supporting their own child at home, and not all parents are educators or people who are aware of education. So some of these parents feel out of their depth. They feel a little bit helpless when there is a concern with their child. So we want our parents to feel positive about the school, positive about education for their child with their needs, and we need to be looking at that. It helps to promote a good vibe for you, it's good for your school, it's good for your parents, and it's good for the child. And this can only lead to benefits, one after the other. And in this module, I will be giving you plenty of resources in order to do that very thing, and which is a wonderful thing to do. The last module is module 5, and it's looking at teachers, looking at you. And more now than ever, we need support. So what does support normally look like? And some of you may not really be aware. It just happens. And I'm not saying that you're not aware. I'm just saying that these are things that just happen naturally in our day-to-day interactions in schools, and they're wonderful moments. We support our students, we help them, we guide them when they put their hands up, and you can see little Johnny at the back, who wasn't really contributing so much at the start of the lesson, now feels confident and is putting his hand up and is getting involved. And we enjoy that physical contact, that physical eye-to-eye contact that we have, and it rewards us. We know we're doing it well. We have those games that we play, and when you talk to your colleagues in the corridor or in the classroom next door, you bounce ideas off of each other, and that's part of your support. When you vent and you're slightly annoyed or angry about something, maybe something didn't quite go as well as you planned, then you can talk to a colleague about that. And we are talking about special needs here. We're not talking about your normal everyday to-day practice. We're talking about special needs. And there are moments when you have that particular student where things don't go well, or a group of students where things don't go well. And you can have a chat with your neighbour in the next classroom. You can have that chat with your teacher, your LSA, TA, whoever's in that classroom, and you can discuss that idea quite openly, quite freely, physically close to each other. That's changed. Also, going into the staff room, I know has been a wonderful thing. I think for me, every now and again I've gone into the staff room, and I've even had moments, especially in my early years when I was working with autistic children, I would go in and I'd sometimes cry, because it can be a challenging thing to do, but having that support, having that network of your colleagues, your peers, your friends at work is so important. And we're missing a little bit of that. You may be thinking that it doesn't apply to you, but then it may apply to your colleagues. It may apply to someone else. Just recently, these are the emotions that are experienced by teachers. Some may be feeling one or two of these. Some may feel all of these at once. And that's a lot to be dealing with, as I'm sure you all know. So in November 2019, which is just not that long ago, TESS, which is the Times Education Supplement, did the annual Teachers Wellbeing Survey. They found that 34% were worried. Teachers were worried about their mental health. In December 2019, there was a survey done that found 80% of teachers said that they were at breaking points from stress. 200,000 teachers were looked at in a study and found that 1 in 5 teachers wanted to leave. And 50% of new teachers said in another study that they wanted to leave in 5 years. And that is a new teachers applying to this profession. I'm sorry. So when we're looking at this final module, module 5, it may be you. It may be you who's thinking, yes, I need support. I need to have support. And it may be you who's thinking, no, I'm fine. But look at supporting your colleagues. And that's what this course, this module covers. So it does look at you, but it's not just you. Excuse me. It looks at your department, the other departments, your friends in school, the rest of your colleagues, and the school as a whole. It's important to feel valued, and that's the gratitude you get from feeling valued as a practitioner, because education, we all know, education is one of those jobs where you are constantly busy, you're constantly thinking and adapting your plans, and there's a big demand for having things just right. And it's important to do it just right, because you know that there are children who are being supported, and you're delivering their curriculum. And that's what this covers. It's important that you feel valued about that. Sorry, I've been talking so long, I feel a little bit parched. So, so when we're looking at your colleagues, when we're delivering online, some of your colleagues do feel isolated, they do feel stressed, and they do have anxiety. Whether that's you or your other colleagues, your friends at work, that's what this module is all about, and it's about supporting that. So that brings me to the conclusion. I have introduced the course to you. Don't forget, it comes with all of these resources for each of those modules, and I really would recommend doing all 5 modules, as you get a wealth of materials, which I know you're going to love because I love them. And now we're ready for the Q&A. And that brings my thing to a close.
Many thanks, Emma. Very, very interesting webinar. Thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise and giving us insight of what delegates can expect on the course. Some very staggering statistics there, some of them actually quite frightening, quite depressing, but hopefully the fact that we've got so many people here today shows they are still interested in this profession and committed to this particular area of pedagogy. I'm just seeing, I can see that some people have asked questions about the course and certificates and resources following on from this. If anybody has any questions relating to the course content or what they can expect from it, please do feel free to add those into your chat box. At the moment, I'm not seeing, okay, I've just got one here from Supriya. Hi, Supriya. Which module would best focus on how a TA can support a teacher?
Well, it depends on the need of the child or the children. So if you have children who, I would recommend doing the first 3 modules for that.
Yeah, I mean, actually, we're running this as a full course.
Okay. So modules. Sorry, go on.
No. So I'm just saying to Supriya, obviously this would be covered across the modules, but I think what Emma was just saying there is probably most focused in the first 3.
Yeah, I mean, the first 3 modules are looking at supporting the children and looking at specific needs and then general needs. However, as an LSA or a TA, you are constantly supporting your teacher, and so module 4 equally is going to module 5 is equally going to be as important. And if you are an LSA or a TA who has regular communication with your parents, then module 4 is going to be suitable as well. So all modules are going to be suitable, just for various different things and aspects of your role.
Okay, thanks, Emma. There's another question here which I'm going to answer. Someone saying, but when does it take place? How do you sign up, etc. So the next cohort will run from the 1st of September to the 29th of September, and they are spread out across those weeks. So it's 1 module per week, and you can find more information and details on our website. If you just go to the virtual courses, and then you'll see send and inclusion, and you'll get information on the costs there. And just to re-emphasize that the cost of this certified course includes, I think it's 1,260, and that includes all your resources. So all those resources that Emma showed you per module are included, obviously with your certificate as well, plus the experience of a relatively small cohort where you'll get to work with Emma directly and have a chance to get her experience and input with any questions or concerns that you may have. Any other questions from anybody? Here's your opportunity. Lots of thank yous and very useful, and thanks very much. We are coming up close to the end of our hour, so I'll just say a few words to conclude whilst people consider if they've got anything else to ask. Just want to say a big thank you to Emma again for sharing her I think very obvious and warming passion around this subject, but also her knowledge and expertise. And thank you to all our attendees. There are nearly 100 of you here today, and many more that signed up. If you do have any questions that were not answered, or you think about afterwards, or you'd like any further advice on any SEND training, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We'll be more than happy to assist. A reminder again that a video recording of this webinar will be sent to you tomorrow, along with a short webinar survey and a certificate of attendance. So we would be very grateful if you could give us some feedback. It's very useful. We share that with Emma, and we use that to review what you might like in the future. So do let us know of anything that you might like to see in this format moving forward. And again, just to repeat that we'll send you a PDF of the PowerPoint and a couple of additional resources that Emma has kindly shared with us. So just again, if you did miss this, if you weren't sure about this, in September, we are running a related virtual course with Emma. Again, it's called Send Online Addressing the Issues, and that runs from the 1st of September to the 29th of September with 5 separate sessions per module. The booking deadline for that is Wednesday, the 26th of August, so that is tomorrow. Now, we may be able to extend that a little bit because obviously that doesn't give you much time to perhaps turn that around, but places are limited. So equally, I would say try and book as early as you can to avoid disappointment. You can visit our website, www.infinitelearning.ae, and you'll find all the information about the course and how to book on our virtual. If you go to our e-learning section and virtual courses, you'll find all the details. Moving on as well, just in relation to future webinars, do have a look on our, again in our e-learning section, there's a webinar page. Our next one is entitled Bilingual and Multilingual Classrooms Supporting Young Language Learners Across the Curriculum. That's going to be led by Natalie Kroom, and that takes place tomorrow at 4 p.m, so Wednesday the 26th of August. That's a great webinar. It's an introduction to another virtual course of the same name. Really a discussion for teachers and leaders of children of 3 to 12 years of age who are learning in a second or additional language environment. And Natalie will take you there through considering how our own language learning experiences can be leveraged to help us better support our young learners. So I'm just checking again, finally, before we say our goodbyes, are there any burning questions? Just one here. Will there be examples in the course of how to support students in a PE setting?
In PE, well, we're going to be yes. So module 1 will be looking at ISD, ADD, and ADHD, and that looks at focus and attention. So there's nothing that's going to specifically support physical movement. However, the course does look at promoting kinesthetic learning and the kinesthetic approach. So a lot of this is looking at promoting movement whilst learning as well. That's module 1.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Emma. Okay, well, that seems to be all the questions for today. So until then, on our next webinar, or perhaps we'll see you on the virtual course. Thank you once again to Emma. Best of luck to all of you for the start of the new term. We know it's incredibly challenging at the moment with lots, wherever you are in the world. Certainly here in Dubai with the KHDA, we have, I think, specifically 118 protocols that schools have to abide by and make sure that everything is ticked and I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So all the stress that Emma referred to, we know some of you will be feeling that, and we do wish you all the best of luck as you look after our most prized possessions, our children. So well done to all of you, and wishing you luck and courage in the future weeks and months ahead. And we hope to see you all at our next webinar. Thank you all, and thank you, Emma Paine, once more. Good evening.